T to change your life. Right here on Christ the King Radio, sctkradio.org, or you might be joining us on YouTube /The Father Show. Either way, glad to have you. I'm your host, Mike Thompson. We've got a fantastic show for you today. And I really mean that. Today we have an attorney here that is working in the family court system. And her practice, private practice, is really based off of, the family court. So we're going to be talking about today a lot of the things that happen in family court, a lot of things that you need to be aware of before you go to court, and how, possibly even how to behave once you're in court, because you don't want to get in front of a judge and take that judge off, and then you're wondering why you're losing on all your motions. So definitely stay with us, and I want to introduce our guest today, which is Mrs. Dianne Van Voorhees.
Correct.
And she is an attorney, has been practicing for over 15 years, and she is just fantastic. I've read some things about her, and I really like her spirit, and I was so happy to have you on the show, and was so glad that I could get you on the show, number one. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you?
Thank you so much, Mike. It's really an honor to be able to come on your show and to be asked to be on your show, so I really appreciate it. I guess I can say that right now I'm practicing family law, landlord-tenant law, and general civil litigation. So that means I don't practice criminal law, and I do focus on domestic relations.
Mm-hmm.
I have a long history of practicing in family law, immigration law, bankruptcy law. I've practiced in a lot of different areas, and it's come to be known to me that I love family law the most, along with the landlord-tenant items. I like to help people.
Okay. So I was going to ask you, what is it about family law that you like so much?
Unfortunately, people do end up having conflicts within their own families, with their partners, with the people they share children with, and it's a really hard thing to go through. And I like being able to be that advocate for somebody who's going through that tough situation.
Mm-hmm.
Just be their champion, help them through that tough time. Hopefully they still have a family, even though their families are living in a new way.
Right. It's a different dynamic
Yes.
in family. And even when you say that, it's one thing I'm trying to get more people to understand how co-parenting is so important, not for you.
Right.
It's for your kids. And they need to have that synergy where their parents are getting along, even if it's not real. But in their eyes and what they see, the parents get along. So.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Your kids shouldn't have to be divorced from you just because you're divorced from their other parent, or broken up with because you're not with their other parent. Sometimes you weren't married in the first place, so that's why I say that. But the kids deserve to still have a good relationship with each of their parents without interference from their parents' own adversarial issues between each other.
Yeah. And I know how that is, but you can still be a good parent to your child, who your focus should be on anyway, and do that while you are, separated from your formal spouse.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done, but you really just have to get over yourself and put your child ahead of yourself.
Yeah, that's it. We're the adults.
Right.
We're the ones that's supposed to be teaching our children how to behave and how to act. But we're telling them one thing and showing them something altogether different.
Yeah.
And that is a problem.
Well, we're not perfect people, but we can try our best.
No, and that's the key, trying your best. And I don't think some of us don't even try our best.
I agree with you. Many people do not try our best. and sometimes that's something you have to contend with as a parent, or a future ex-spouse or ex-partner. Sometimes you are going to have another person who isn't on the same page with you as far as putting your child first, or putting themselves aside so they can move forward in life. And that can be really hard. And that's, I mean, we do have some tools in the court system to help deal with that too.
What are those?
Well, some of them are, you know, the kinds of motions that you can file and the kind of protections that you can get for yourself and for your children when the other person can't be reasonable or is dangerous towards you and your children.
So let me ask you, one of my questions. Why is it that when somebody goes into the court system, and I'm going to put this on the women, so don't slap me, don't hit me, but why can't women go into a court and file a restraining order on the former spouse, and when it comes to be the allegation are false and no merit to them, nothing happens? You know, not even a slap on the wrist. You know, they can just walk out and say, "Oh, okay." So
are you saying you've seen instances where people maybe falsely reported a crime and then they aren't being punished for it?
Well, I know if you report a crime, you know, there should be some.
Sure.
Yeah, there should be something, some consequences to that. But I've seen a lot of times where nothing. You know, the wife or the former wife or the girlfriend just walks away and nothing.
Sure. I mean, I think it depends on the circumstance and the case.
Okay.
So part of it is if you say that somebody has committed domestic violence, for example, that is a crime. You're reporting a crime. And so you have the right to get a protection order in that case. Well, if you report a crime falsely, there is a possibility that you can be charged with false reporting. I guess there are a couple of reasons why you might not see that happen. I think you would see it happen sometimes. One of the reasons would be, does the prosecutor have the time and resources, and are they sure that they would be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this person made a false report? So these are all considerations that a prosecutor would have to make to determine if they want to use state funds and state resources to go after that person for that purpose. So that would be one reason why you wouldn't see it. Okay. Another thing is, there's a safeguard. So if, for example, if I were the person filing for a protection order, I go before a judge ex parte. That means the other person doesn't know yet because it's an emergency. I'm saying I'm in danger and I need a protection order. So the judge is going to hear, hey, do I hear what I need to hear to issue a temporary restraining order based on this person's emergency situation? If they say yes, then you set a court date for 10 days from that day. And on that 10th day, the person I've accused has the opportunity to defend himself or herself. And say, hey, you know what, this didn't happen, or this isn't true, or hey, it happened, but it's not going to happen again, or whatever it is, so that they can make a determination on what the permanent restraining order status can be.
So are there any recourses that a person can do if they have been falsely accused?
Well, again, you have the opportunity to defend yourself if you're falsely accused. So you get to come to court, and you get to state your case or contest the other person's case. And so that would be the way that you can.
Because, and here's my example, and this happened to me, so I can tell you personally.
Sure.
I was going to take my wife and my daughter to Disney World. Then I decided no. I'd already bought the tickets and everything, and then I decided no, I don't want to stay in this marriage. So I left. But my ex-wife was like, okay, well, why don't you still come with it? And I'm like, no, but I will pay for you to take your best friend. I pay the extra cost. And I said, the only thing I want to do is to be able to see my daughter off when they go. And that's it. So everything was fine and dandy. The day I got ready, the day they were leaving, I had called in somebody to replace me at work, and I get served a restraining order so that I could not be at the airport. There was no merit to it whatsoever, because she didn't go after that and I didn't go either, so there was no, but at that particular moment, I could not go to the airport to see my daughter off.
Right.
So, and I know I'm not a one-time case. I know fathers have experienced these things as they've gone through their divorce. and it's just, but nothing happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's really unfortunate because I think that's part of the nature of the domestic disputes. That
Yeah.
and I don't mean like the violent part of it or the abusive part. I'm just saying when people are unhappy in their marriage and they're working their way out of it,
Mhm.
sometimes they do things that are really, really mean to each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
And mean to their kids. And what is the recourse? There probably isn't a whole lot of necessarily satisfying legal recourse. You can't go back in time and make that not happen.
No,
And
no,
you can't prove necessarily that that was her only motivation. And even if you did, what does that do for your child later on when they find out about this dispute?
Right, and grant you, I understand that. It hurt me, and that's
Oh,
what
absolutely.
she was going after.
No, and that's the sad, I mean, it's part of the sad reality of
Yeah.
breakups.
But
They're
realistically,
very hurtful often.
it hurt her, my daughter, as well,
Yeah.
because she didn't get to see me also. So that's one thing that I really would like to see more parents do, is understand that even though you might be getting back at one member of the family, but you're also hurting your child at the same time.
Right.
And you don't quite understand that. But we've got to take a quick break.
Okay.
And when we get back, we're going to continue to dive into this, because this is a great conversation, and I know that I'm not the only one that has gone through these things. And we're going to have Dianne Van Voorhees to hopefully open your eyes to some of the things that goes on in the court system and in the family law and what you need to be aware of. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, and you are watching The Father Show, and today we've got Dianne Van Voorhees, and she's an attorney in a private practice. She practices different forms of law, but today we're going to be talking about family law, and it's part of her practice as well. So before we took the break, we were talking about the punishment should a person file false allegations and get a restraining order. So if you missed it, rewind and catch it. So we are going to talk next. When you're going through a divorce, I know there's a lot of emotions involved. I know there's sometimes a lot of pain involved, but I believe an amicable divorce can be done if like you were saying earlier, putting aside those feelings. And I know it's hard. I've been through both, and I know it's really hard, but it can be done. And really, having a divorce where you can sit down in front of a mediator and work out all the details is wonderful, because I tell clients or people I talk with that it doesn't make sense for you to pay an attorney $200, $300, $500 an hour, and you're fighting over a $20 lamp.
Right.
That's
Right.
just idiocy. So I like to see, more. But being an attorney, is that something that you recommend, that having an amicable divorce, even with an attorney?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I can only speak for myself. As a family law attorney, I'm there to help you through a really tough time in your life. I'm not there to make it worse for you in the future and make it so your kids can't go to college, or you can't drive your car down the street or something like that. So, and our court system is set up so that we are pushed to try and resolve the issues without going to court. So even when you file your divorce case and you go to your initial status conference, that court is going to send you to mediation. They will require you to go to mediation before they will even see you in a permanent orders hearing. You're not going to trial till you mediate something.
Okay.
Okay? So knowing that, I always encourage my clients, and we try to encourage the opposing side, which isn't always possible, to work something out. Work something out. Figure out where we have some middle ground. Where can we agree on things? Maybe it's okay if we have to litigate a couple of things, but we shouldn't have to litigate the entire case.
Yeah.
Because no one has time and no one has money for that. And really, in the meantime, your relationship with your kids is still hanging in the balance because you don't have anything resolved. Where am I going for Thanksgiving this year? Am I going to be with my grandma at Christmas?
Yeah.
That's really not fair to do that to your kids. So if you can work those things out ahead of time, put yourself aside for a little bit so you can do this for your kids. And I know that's not an easy thing to do. I know it's not.
It isn't, to share. You
Right.
know, we are taught as kids we're supposed to share.
Right.
And when you go through divorce, you don't want to share your kids. You're like, no, they're mine.
Absolutely.
But
Like you envision your child getting up out of their bed, coming into the room with you and having their day with you, for
Mhm.
example, on Christmas, if you
Mhm.
celebrate Christmas. And when that dream goes away, it's hard to accept.
yeah, but you still have to accept it.
You do have to
trying
accept
to
it.
be stingy and saying, these are mine, first of all, they're not yours.
No.
You know, but to not be willing to share the kids, you know, that the two of you made. And I'm not saying it's just women, because I know men do the same thing. But you have to understand that, okay, now you have a
Right.
new thing going on here, and you have got to share, because it's not fair for one parent to have the child every Christmas, and it's not fair for another parent not to have the child every
Right.
Christmas.
Right.
So I think ideally they can have them together. Why can't you have Christmas together?
Some people can.
I know I did.
Some people can
I
do
did
it.
one.
And some people do it really well, and they have a nice Christmas together.
Mhm.
And we're talking about one particular holiday as an example.
Yes.
Sometimes it's birthdays. Sometimes it's whatever. It's nice for your kids to know that they can rely on you to be there for them for their big occasions. People, I mean, we've all grown up with people who've said, you know what, my parents hate each other. They won't come to my wedding together. I don't want to have a wedding because my parents can't get along. That's
Yeah.
not fair to do that to another person.
Yeah, I actually saw a show not long ago where the daughter was getting ready to get married, and she wanted both her dad and her stepdad to walk her down the aisle. And the dad was the biological father, said, ain't no way. I'm not going to walk you down the aisle with him. And, you know, they didn't get into the what happened, what caused the divorce, or anything like that. But it was just, hey, this is your daughter. Put aside your differences and walk your daughter down the aisle.
Right.
And unfortunately, I think I'm going to come into that same scenario because I have an 18-year-old daughter who, her dad and I don't see eye to eye. And it's not because I don't want it, but he's that same father where he's like, nope, don't want him around, don't want to see him, don't want to talk to him. And I'm like, hey, I've invited him over to the house because I truly believe that the kids need to see unity in the parents. And and I know whether the kids say it or not, it bothers them. And I don't care what their ages are.
Right.
I tell people all the time, it doesn't matter how old the kid may be, they always want their parents back together again.
I don't know if that's everyone, but I think it's very common.
Yeah.
It's very common that people want their parents back together
Yeah.
again. And maybe it's not even so much having those two people back together again as having some kind of touchstone back together again.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mhm.
having something to rely on. And that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons why it's so important to do your best. Put your differences aside, get over yourself, put your kid in front, ahead of all of the other priorities that you might
Yeah.
have. Think about how what you do impacts them and do your best to communicate
Yeah.
with the other parent and get along.
I can tell you, like I said, from my own personal experience, we did that. My son's mother and I, when we got divorced, we went down to the courthouse and said, okay, we're getting divorced. We're going to split everything 50-50, custody 50-50. Nobody pays child support. We're just going to take care of him on our own. And we did his birthdays together. We did Christmas together and all that. So he never saw us really having those conflicts. And it was great. It was the peace that I had.
Right.
You know, the babies talk to her when there was something wrong or something going on without worrying about fussing and fighting and somebody cussing one another out. But that whole piece let me live my life in peace. And I think for most men, that's what we want. But for anybody, I would think that's what they would want.
Well, I think
peace.
it totally depends on the dynamic of the relationship.
Yes.
So I see some, people with your situation, And then I've seen people with a remarkable situation of actually sharing a home with the ex-spouse.
I've seen
so
that. Yeah.
One person might want to have one side of the home or the basement or the top floor, and the other one has the other, because they really want to make sure their kids don't have to go back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
It's the one head, one bed kind of rule.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone can handle living with that person. Part of the reason you get a dissolution of marriage is because you don't want to be with that person anymore.
I personally don't agree with that one.
Yeah, I think it varies. Like I said, it depends on your ages, where you are in life, how well you can get along, what what it was that got you to this point in the first place, that sort of thing. But I've also seen people who unfortunately are the victims of domestic violence, or their other, their spouse might have had a horrible mental illness that they can't ever overcome. And when you're the only person who's willing to go that extra mile, there are no extra miles that you can go to make up for the other person not being willing to do that. There's just not.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you just have to cut your losses, and in those cases, it might be that it's not in the kid's best interest to spend time with that other parent.
Yeah, and even when I talk with fathers, I always tell them if there's a reason why the mother is keeping you from the baby, if they're because you're an alcoholic or because you're a drug addict or because you're abusive, then by all means, definitely you're going to protect your child.
Right.
However, I have had many stories where there was no basis for that other than anger and resentment, and that shouldn't be the case.
Right.
So when do you think a child advocate should be put into a custody battle? Well, and don't answer that question because we got to take a break, and that one I want to really get into as well. So we'll dive back into that when we get back. So, but ladies and gentlemen, you are watching The Father Show, and we're here with Dianne Van Voorhees, and she's an attorney, and you will be able to get her information at the end of the show. So she's going to tell you how you can reach her, because from what I've read about her and what we've talked about before the show, she is an attorney that I wish I had when I was going through my stuff, and I think she is really will help you, not just men but women as well, to get through your divorce and get through it with that least amount of pain as possible. And that's what you want to try to do. It's already hard as it is to get a divorce, and that emotion of leaving one spouse and so forth and your kids, but to be able to do it amicably and quietly and lovingly is the way we all should try to go. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, and you are tuned back into The Father Show, and we're here today with Dianne Van Voorhees, and she is an attorney, and one of the things that she practices is family law. She doesn't do any criminal law, so don't be trying to call her for that, but she is a family law, and we are talking today about the family court and things that you need to know, things that you can do in the family court system and how you can navigate through it and what's the best way. So before we took a break, we had talked about having an amicable divorce and how wonderful really that is if you can get that, the two of you can do that. But one of the questions I had right before the break was, when would you appoint a child advocate? When is the child advocate should be coming into play? Okay,
so first I'm going to talk a little bit about terminology. So in Colorado we've had changes over the years in the terms we use for child advocates. We've had guardian ad litem, and now we have the court and family investigator. We also have the child's legal representative, and we have a parental responsibilities evaluator. And they each have kind of different things. One of the really important things to note is the court and family investigator is someone that can be appointed so that they can do the investigation that the judge couldn't do. The judge isn't going to come to your house and investigate the situation. They're not going to talk to you. They're not going to talk to your kid. But the child and family investigator can do that.
Yeah.
And if you qualify for state pay, you can also ask for a waiver so that the cost of the child and family investigator, or we call them CFI, so I'm stumbling over the words because we normally say CFI. So a CFI will be someone who can be appointed, and if you qualify for the fee waiver, pay for at the state pay rate. Either way, the cap for that is $2,750. So if you end up with a CFI appointed to your case, that's the maximum that they are allowed to charge you without leave of the court.
And you can have that split, the cost
Right.
split.
Normally you do
Okay.
have it split. I see it a lot of times 50-50. Sometimes it's proportionate share depending on people's incomes. Sometimes half of it's state pay and half of it's the regular rate.
Okay.
So that's our most commonly used type of appointed expert. And that person is going to investigate, what are the best interests of the child? What do we recommend based on the analysis of the best interests of the child? What do we recommend as far as where this child is going to live and how much time they're going to spend with each person, and whether these people can share parental responsibilities and make decisions together, or if maybe one of them needs to do it and the other one doesn't get to do that. Hopefully people have been parenting consistently over time and they can share parenting responsibilities. Sometimes that's not the case.
Yes.
Sometimes it's not. And it doesn't mean that you could never get there. It means that you might have to gradually get there over time.
Yeah, and when I was going through mine and was trying to get custody of my daughter because of some real good reason and real honest reasons, the court told me that short of, well, I won't say the court, but the court, people in the court system told me short of me bringing in my ex-wife with needle marks up her arm, the chance for me to get my daughter is slim and none. Now, we are talking, a good 12 years ago, 12, 15 years ago. So it is, I know some things have changed.
Right.
But for fathers, and I've seen, my best friend was going through the same thing while I was going through it. And I saw that the court system wasn't looking at him as a viable
As a real
person
parent, yeah.
to be a real parent.
Right.
And it was ridiculous.
Yeah, through legislation in our state, we've tried to address that. It says specifically in the statute, we are not going to decide based on the parent's gender whether they're the better parent or not. So that's one of the, it's not a factor, whether you're the father or the mother.
It shouldn't be.
And
Now,
under the law. I guess what it comes down to, and oftentimes we find out this is why maybe the people aren't going to work out anymore in a relationship, because people are not sharing their responsibilities with their children. They're not sharing the household duties, or one person maybe feels like it's lopsided as far as they have more put on them than the other person. And so to say, I have never bathed my child, I've never fed my child, I've never tucked my child in at night, I've never read to them, I've never arranged the parent-teacher conferences, I've never taken them to the doctor, I don't know who their dentist is, I've never gone to the library with them, I don't know who their friends are, then you probably aren't ready to parent them. You haven't been doing it. They're probably not ready for you to try either.
So
doesn't mean you can't learn.
And the advocate can determine that.
Right. So the advocate can look at, hey, you know what, are these people, relatively similar in their shouldering of the responsibilities for their child and their upbringing? Do they get along well enough that they can communicate about whether we have Girl Scouts tonight without it turning into some kind of police intervention? Then yes, maybe they can have shared decision-making authority, and the child should be able to live with them in equal terms. But if you live in Idaho, you shouldn't expect your child in Colorado to be with you half-time.
Well, that's true too.
So there are things that...
well, but you could, and I would have to disagree to some point, because, and I don't necessarily agree that it's best for the child.
Sure.
But if the child lives with, one parent in one state half the year and another parent in another state the other half of the year, is that something that's viable? And I know...
I know people do it. I think it's frowned upon generally just because of what we know about child development now. And the idea that we want to put kids first, and we want to think of them first. So you have to think, does your son really benefit from being uprooted every 6 months? So they're with their neighbors, they're with their friends, they're with their school, they're with their daycare people, they're with whatever family members are there, and then they're gone for 6 whole months at a time.
Yeah.
That's really hard for a child and their
So what would you recommend
development.
in something like that? You know, if it's a situation where one parent needs to move or wants to move to another state and the other one is in a different state, but is still very active in the child's life.
It's a really personal decision, and
Yeah.
it depends on that family, and it depends on their situation. And if you can find a way to make it work with your, with your child's other part of their family,
Mhm.
then you can find a way to make it work. If you put it in front of a judge and make them decide, you may end up with a couple weeks out of the year visiting your kid, and it's going to be on your dime going to your place. So,
Oh, I've seen that one.
yeah, I mean, again, it's generally not going to be considered in a child's best interest to be uprooted back and forth. Sometimes, though, we will see a situation where, you know what, maybe things are dangerous in this, situation this kid's in, and maybe this parent, maybe dad's got an amazing job opportunity in the other state, and the only way we're really going to be able to make it financially as a family is if dad does take this job in this other state. It's not dad wanting to abandon their child.
Yeah.
It's dad doing the
Right.
best for their family and based
Yeah.
on the circumstances, and unfortunately, they're divorced. And so mom's not coming.
Yeah,
You know?
and that's the thing, because it's not every time it has to be something negative.
No.
It might be in the best interest, or maybe the mother wants to move closer to home
Sure.
with her parents so she can have support.
Right.
Theirs, and when
Or
she
maybe you
needs it.
have family who needs you that
Yeah.
live out of state.
Yeah.
Or maybe you have elderly parents that need
Right.
to be cared for.
Right.
So you're choosing between your child and your elderly parents.
Yeah,
That's a tough
That's
call.
a hard one.
Yeah.
that's
So
hard.
there are a lot of different factors that would have to be considered, and it just, like I said, it varies case by case.
Yeah, but an advocate will sit down with the parents and decide, okay, what is best, or should they go to mediation to get that?
Well, a child and family investigator, and I'm just going to focus on that one because we have 3 different
Okay.
kinds that I brought up, and I can tell you about the websites where you can go to find out more about this.
Mhm.
But the child and family investigator is going to come and they're going to visit you at your home, and they're going to visit the other parent at their home, and then they're going to visit with the child or children, and they're going to talk to maybe, the other people that live in the home with the children, the other people that live in the home where the other parent maybe wants the children to live, and other people that are involved in the child's life. So it's going to depend. If you are talking about a newborn, there aren't a whole lot of people that know the newborn. Maybe there's a daycare
Yeah.
provider, maybe there's a grandmother, maybe there's the pediatrician or something like that. But if we're talking about a 12-year-old, that person has teachers, they have maybe scout leaders, maybe they have a gymnastics coach. They have a lot of people who know them and are part of their community and can speak to, how they see this child developing and whether they seem like they're in a good place or not, or what kind of factors seem to impact them negatively or positively.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So they're going to also get to hear from the child, assuming the child is verbal
Old
and
enough.
can
Mhm.
understand what the conversation is. That's one of the factors that they will consider in this best interest of child analysis.
Okay.
What are the wishes of the child?
Yeah. And that's one that I had a question on, and we'll have to ask it in the next segment because we got to take another break.
Okay.
But I do want to find out what is the age that a child can say where they want to live, and which parent they want to live with. And I heard one, so I want to make sure that's correct, and I'm going to ask you the same question.
Okay.
But, ladies and gentlemen, we have to take another break, and we're here today with Dianne Van Voorhees, and she is an attorney, and she practices family law as part of her practice. So we're talking about the things that can go on in the family court system. So stay with us. Tell somebody else to come join us right here on The Father Show, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, and you are watching The Father Show, and we're here today with Dianne Van Voorhees, and she is an attorney doing family law, and I'm telling you, the conversation, the information she's providing on this show today really can help just about everybody out there that has gone through a divorce, thinking about going through a divorce, working on your child custody, and what's in the best interest of your child. And I'm here to tell you the best interest of your child is focusing on the best interest of your child, not you, and not what you feel, because it's not about that. It's about what's best for your child and how they're going to handle going through this divorce and seeing mom and daddy separating with each other. But before we took a break, in the last segment we were talking about child advocacy. So we were, the CFI we talked about. And so before we took a break, I asked the question of how old does a child have to be or can be to say, this is where I want to live?
So there isn't a magic number. And I want to make sure that we're clear. The wishes of the child are one of the factors that a court considers under the statute for regarding the best interest of the child. So it kind of depends on the age and maturity of the child. I mean, sometimes a 6-year-old has a level of maturity and an understanding that they might be able to express that viewpoint. Sometimes it's a 13-year-old. More likely we're going to take a 16-year-old's account or a 17-year-old's account, that sort of thing. Probably not going to be able to ask the 2-year-old because they can't express that opinion, So it's really a case-by-case basis, and again, it's just one factor.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons it's only one factor is because we don't want to put that on a kid. We don't want to say, how would you like to live with mommy? How would you like to live with daddy? Wouldn't you rather live with mommy? That's not appropriate to do that to a child.
Yeah.
You don't need them picking sides. It's bad enough that their family is changing in the first place.
And it will be hard on the child because I'm thinking in some cases, needless to say not all, but in some cases there will be some resentment with the child from the other parent that didn't get picked.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've known people my age who recall their parents' divorce and recall being asked point blank, who would you like to live with? And that puts them in a horrible position.
Yeah, but when I have an instance where I know a guy that was fighting for his child, and she said, I want to live with my dad, and had a better relationship with the father. However, the court said, nope, you're going to go with your mom. And it was just like, really? I mean, and she was, I think, around 10, 11 at that time, and she had a much better, because, and I'm the outsider looking in, and
Sure.
I hear one side and don't know both sides, but I'm hearing that the mom was very volatile, whereas he wasn't, and the daughter just had a much better relationship with her father.
Well, that's a great example of why that is a factor that is considered. Their wishes are legitimate to consider, assuming that they're the age and maturity where they can have that kind of an opinion or a
Yeah,
wish.
they asked her.
Sure. But they're also going to look at the other factors, like the wishes of both of the parents, the interaction of the child with their parents and their other siblings, their adjustment to their home and their school and their neighborhood. They're also going to look at the mental and physical health of all the parties and the children. And they look at, whether there's a past pattern of the parties with the child that reflects a system of values, a time commitment, and mutual support. They also look at how close do you live to each other. Again, are we going from Nebraska to Wyoming, or are we going, 30 minutes away?
Yeah, she was actually moving out of state. And, when you mentioned earlier that you've seen where the parent had to pay for that, he did. He had to pay for himself to fly out there to pick up his daughter. Make sure he had a round-trip ticket for the daughter so she can come here and spend time with him. And then he had to fly her back and then fly himself back. But in the other part, there was no recourse because he'd get there to pick up his daughter and she wouldn't be there. So, and he had no recourse. Only thing he could do was fly back and without getting to see his daughter.
Right.
So, in a long story short, he ended up getting custody of her because they found domestic violence going on in that home.
Oh, goodness. Well, that leads into some of the other factors that are here. They look at the history of any child abuse or neglect, and they look at any history of spousal abuse. And then finally they look at the ability of the parties to place the child's needs above their own needs.
Hey, really?
So these are the things they look at. And again, people are imperfect, judges are imperfect,
Right.
CFIs can be imperfect, attorneys can be imperfect. We aren't mind readers, that's why we have to have courts, that's why we have to put facts in front of somebody, and that person has to do what they can with the facts in front of them to make a decision.
Well, that's why I like I said, what I read about you, what I've heard, talking with you, that I won't say, I'm not going to try to send a whole bunch of men over there to you and say, this is the woman you need to have for your attorney. But I do think that you would be a fair attorney, and you will be a good attorney to represent a father, because we feel that we are not represented well in the court system. A lot of men feel that when they go into the court, they're already behind the 8 ball, and that the woman gets more, and even on the custody issue, because you hear in the court system the father gets her every other weekend, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, dinner night. You can't build a relationship like that. It's just not going to happen. However, I understand that in some cases you really have no choice, because the father works so much.
Sure.
And he has to decide, okay, is work going to take precedence over me spending time with my child?
Right.
And if that's the case, then you really can't complain.
Right.
But I want to know how can men, if they want to, men and women, because we have women watch the show as
Sure.
well, but how can somebody get a hold of you?
Well, you can look me up on my website, and
Okay.
we can probably provide a link to that, but it's
We will.
It's VanVoorheesLawOffice.com, so it's
Okay.
real short. It's VanVoorheesLawOffice.com, and we'll put a link up for you. I also have a phone number. You can reach me at 720-432-3119. And my email address is, again, nice and short like my website. It's Dianne at VanVoorheesLawOffice.com. And I would love to hear from people. I've had plenty of fathers as clients, and I've had plenty of mothers as clients. And, it's a case-by-case situation, and sometimes people can do 50-50, sometimes it needs to be one parent, and sometimes that one parent is the father.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, we will have all your information here on the at the end of the show. So if you didn't get it, you can rewind, needless to say. But if not, it will be all printed up on at the end of the show, so you can always find it. But I really appreciate you being on the show.
Sure.
It has been great, and it's been very informative. I've learned something, needless to say. But I'm hoping that my audience learned some things as well, to go through the divorce. If you have to go through it, why you have to go through it so nasty? And it's not something that you have to do. You don't have to do it that way. And I say it, and I'm going to say it again. I think a lot of times we go through those things and we act the way we act because that's what we've been taught. That's what we've seen.
Sure.
And it doesn't have to be that way. You can have a divorce, go through it, and make it as little harmful on the child as possible. And a real quick question, because we only got about a couple of minutes.
Okay.
If you see that a parent is not working in the best interest of the child, is that something that can be addressed in the court system, or an advocate will see
Are
that?
you asking me if my client is not acting in the best interest
Well,
of
yeah,
the
let's
child?
say your client.
It's my job to advocate for my client.
Right.
So I'm not going to throw my client under the bus, because that would be unethical, and I would be a bad attorney for you if I did that to you as my client. But I can talk to my client about, why they might be facing this struggle, and why they might not be able to make, I'm going to reel you in as far as your expectations.
Yeah.
If your expectations are unreasonable based on the circumstances of your case, I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
Because there's no use wasting our time and wasting your money
Yeah.
to try and get something that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I'd love to have you come back on again. I think it would be great for our audience.